Hi, everyone. Starting the Academic Senate meeting a little late today, and that is my fault, and I apologize to everyone that has been patiently waiting. I am calling this meeting of Santa Barbara City College Academic Senate officially to order. Today is Wednesday, March 9th. The time is now 3:14 p.m. We always start our Senate meetings off with an acknowledgement of our Academic Senate community values, for which this current Senate worked on and approved and accepted. The one I'd like to highlight for us this week, as I do each and every meeting, is the first one. I highlight one in each and every meeting. And this meeting, I'm going to highlight number one. And to share that with you, it's to say it in the meeting. We want to create an atmosphere for open, honest exchange. If something is bothering you and you are open to sharing, please share it with the group. Speak to your discomfort. Often our emotional reactions to authentic exchanges can offer valuable learning opportunities. As members of the Academic Senate, we need to be willing to be uncomfortable in the work at the table. And I especially want to highlight that one today because we only have one agenda item, which is Jeffrey sharing all sorts of amazing things with us about and good advice on how we should operate and things that we might want to consider and do, observations on previous things we've done. And so he's here with us today, taking time out of his own, life to be here with us and all of those meetings that he and I have had together to give this advice and to learn about us. And now's our chance. Now is our chance. Let's seize this opportunity to have somebody with statewide knowledge and experience from their own California community college. He was a former Academic Senate president himself. And so he has so much wisdom and so much knowledge. And so today's the day. Ask all the questions. And so just like we have here in number one, say it in the meeting. Please do so, so that we can, truly benefit from this opportunity. Our Zoom meeting guidelines, for those of you that are new to our meetings, other than public comment, it's only senators or invited presenters that are allowed to speak during the meetings. So during public comment or at a time when a senator wishes to speak, you'll raise your virtual hand in your Zoom controls to indicate that you would like to share with the Senate. And then you will be called on to speak. So we are now at item 2.4, approval of the agenda. Of course, like I already mentioned, we only really have one agenda item today, which is our presentation. So we will, unless I hear otherwise, we will accept and adopt the agenda as posted and distributed. Okay, which now brings me to public comment, item 3.1. So should anyone from the greater public or Santa Barbara City College campus like to wish to address, there we go, the Academic Senate at this time, please indicate that you would by raising your virtual hand. And I always like to give people just a minute to raise their hand, just in case. Always seems like there's a delay on Zoom. And I'm not seeing any. Okay, which brings us to communications. I have a president's report this week, a written one. I'm sharing an email about the administrative assistant position for Senate. Also, I want to highlight this one out loud so that you know. The Institutional Effectiveness Committee, we had a faculty co-chair. The other chair was Dr. Z. Reyes. That committee has been suspended for the time being while CPC works through their charge and things like that. So for now, that committee has been paused, so to speak. Senate liaisons have prepared a report. It's attached to our agenda. Senate liaisons, is there anything that you would like to share orally quickly If yes, please raise your virtual hand. Seeing some nods no. Okay, great. That brings us to our Executive Vice President's report. Kathy, do you have anything that you would like to share with the Senate at this time?
Given that we have a guest and I don't have anything critically important, I'm going to say no, except thank you for joining us, Jeffrey. It's really nice of you to take the time to be with us, and I'll be listening carefully. Thanks.
Thank you.
And we do have our standing agenda item, which is the request for Senate to consider agendizing items. No requests have been received for this meeting, so we don't need to handle that. One very quick consent agenda item that we'll need to handle. So if you'd like to discuss this item, we'll need to pull it from the consent agenda and we'll put it at the bottom of our agenda today. However, there was a faculty appointment to the 2022 Commencement Planning Committee. So Joanne Graham, an academic counselor who serves athletics and PE, will be representing the Senate and faculty for our commencement planning. And it's my understanding that commencement will be in person this year, yay. So I would love for someone to entertain a motion, or I will entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda. Vice President Ana Garcia.
So moved.
Is there a second?
I second.
Thank you, Senator Ellen Carey. Okay, so our roll call vote. You may vote yes if you are in favor of approving this consent agenda item. No, if you are not in favor. And then you may also abstain, which is a non-vote. Benjamin Reyes.
Yes.
Thank you. Counselor Jen.
Yes.
Ellen.
Yes.
Jenny.
Yes.
Joy.
Yes.
Dee Dee. Elizabeth.
Yes.
Kathy.
Yes.
Robin.
Yes.
Jess. Jess with us. Robbie.
Yes.
Ruth.
Yes.
Tara.
Yes.
Russell. Trisha.
Yes.
And Anna.
Yes.
Great. Okay. Passes. All right, information items very, very, very quickly. I'm sure you all have seen, we are having some big guided pathway event coming up. You are asked to pre-register for it through the Vision Resource Center, available through Pipeline. If you're confused on how to do that, there is a link to the 30-second video created for that. And then the agenda for the guided path days, it's hard to say, pathway days, is here. So it's tomorrow and Friday, and then there's another Path Days 2-day event in May. So please make sure you are going to either of them so that you can learn about the good work that happened, and will happen in the future for guided pathways. Also wanted to give you a heads up now. The Black Student Success Week is coming back to California community colleges, and it is scheduled for April 25th through the 29th. And there's going to be daily webinars and different events. So please be on the lookout for more information around that. And then of course, perhaps you saw, and maybe not because it was very, very short time ago, Ruth Morales closed out the nomination period for our next academic senate president. At this time, there are no nominees. And so Senate steering is going to come together and have a conversation about a way forward. And a discussion perhaps may come to all faculty and things like that around this particular item. So stay tuned for that. Right now, you know as much as we do, which is there is no nominee, and I'm really tired. So we will figure it out. It is okay. And just for today, we don't have any updates on a nomination. Which brings me, I'm so excited, to item 8.1, even though I was late. and I'm so excited for this for a number of reasons. One of them being I've gotten to know Jeffrey very well over the last couple of months, and he has a lot of really good advice. He's been a mentor, a confidant, a friend, and he and I have met, frequently to discuss, let's say, my vision of the Senate and, practices of SBCC and maybe areas of improvement, or what other places do, with the specific conversation happening around our Senate subcommittee structure, which I know you all are very familiar with my constant focus on that. So I am very pleased to introduce you all to Jeffrey Dyer, professor of English at Taft College, and like I said, past Senate president at his school, and you can see all of the different committees he served on at the state level. And then also he was assigned to me through the ASCCC Collegiality in Action program. So if you remember last spring, we had the league and the ASCCC representative come and speak to our campus about shared governance. And then I felt as though I really needed more direction. And so I reached back out to the ASCCC, and they offered this mentoring program, which is how we got involved in it. It's really a pilot program. So hopefully, through this relationship, more pilot programs, or excuse me, this mentoring program will be further developed. But right now, we have Jeffrey to share all the things with us. And so I'm going to turn it over to him. And hopefully you have sharing privileges by now, or maybe not.
Not yet, but if
I
I could
will.
have, I'll share my slide deck. Thank you, Rayanne.
Yeah. And Chris, can you do that if you're not already doing that? And
On it.
thank you. And Jeffrey, do you want us to, I know you have some pauses in your presentation to ask us questions, but would you like as questions arise, do you want senators to raise their hand to ask you, or would you rather it happen after you get to those natural pauses in your presentation?
Well, I would really much rather have people just chime in whenever they want, even though you have such great, processes and rules for etiquette. And I love the way that you're handling your meeting. So I know that you've asked people at the beginning of the meeting to raise hands if they want to speak. And if you want to keep doing that, it's fine with me. It's also fine with me if people really chime in whenever they want. Because I really would like for this to be a discussion. And I think, as you know, from reviewing the slide deck, a lot of the information in the slides is foundational, will certainly be review for a lot of folks, but is here to sort of remind us of the functions of academic senates, what collegial consultation is, how Senate and union roles differ, and look at some typical committee structures at other colleges. So it's fine with me if people jump in whenever they want, as long as that's all right with you, Rayanne, because it's your meeting.
Yep, it's totally good for me. And if anyone does raise their hand, I can certainly, be the bulldozer that interrupts you and says, hey, there's a hand up or something. So
Okay.
I'd be happy to help. So I think everybody knows.
By the way, does my screen share work?
Yep, it looks great.
All right, so it's so good to be here and to see all of you and to get to see Rayanne so eloquently running her meeting. And I've got some old friends and colleagues who are on the call today. So Lori Vasquez and Kathy O'Connor, I've gotten to work with before on statewide committees. I'm Jeffrey Dyer, and as Rayanne said, I was an academic Senate president at Taft College for 4 years. I also served on the ASCCC Executive Committee for 2 years, during which time I chaired lots of committees, but Standards and Practices Committee and resolutions in particular are sort of relevant for the kind of experience that I bring to bear on this project. Currently, I co-chair the Distance Education and Educational Technology Advisory Committee, which we're so lucky to have Lori Vasquez on, who's such an incredibly valuable voice in that group, and on which I've worked with Kathy O'Connor in the past. And I also co-chair the California Virtual Campus Online Education Initiative Advisory Committee as the faculty co-chair. I do some work for ASCCC as well, principally answering requests from the field, usually that have to do with things like the Brown Act or minimum qualification, areas that I've given a lot of feedback to colleagues in the field before, but I think they might have given me this committee or this assignment in particular because when I was a brand new Senate president in 2015, Taft College had two different conflicting constitutions for the Academic Senate, and no one was really quite sure which one to use because we sort of used parts of both, and we knew this was something for the next Senate president to have to deal with. So in the summer of 2015, I spent 5 days making a spreadsheet, which I'd shared on the unofficial Senate President's listserv. So some of you might have seen it in the past, of every constitution and bylaws for every California Community College Academic Senate I could find. And I remember looking at SPCC at the time, and some of the things that we do at Taft College with our Senate Council, they're really sort of similar to your Senate steering committee. So anyway, as Rayanne said, the coaching program through ASCCC is relatively new. You're only the second college to try it out. And when Rayanne came to ASCCC after you'd already had the collegiality in action visit and the local Senate visit, they were wondering about how they might be able to provide something, you know, a little bit more tangible and long lasting. So we agreed and presented to the executive director of ASCCC and the president of the ASCCC that we wanted our objective to be before the end of spring 2022 to be able to make some recommendations to the SBCC Academic Senate around committee structures. Rayanne was principally interested in efficiency of committees, avoiding duplication of effort of different committees, and also clarifying faculty roles for service on committees. So since October 27th, Rayanne and I have checked in at least once a month, twice a month, a couple months, and I've been reading a lot of your packets, your agendas and liaison reports, and it's evident to an outsider that your faculty and your academic senate care deeply about equity and student success. As we can see in today's liaison reports, the work that you're doing around correspondence education, the equity work that's reflected in the liaisons with the days coming up. I just think it's fantastic. And as the co-chair of the CVC OEI Advisory Committee, I'm also excited to read about the achievements that you guys are making with local poker. And I know from some of my distance ed colleagues that are at your faculty that you're all doing great work about that. So it's really great to be here. And again, feel free to chime in at any time. I'd like for this to be a discussion. Here's the game plan that Rayanne and I devised. I know that a lot of this will be reviewed to you, but I want to look at what Title V says about the function of academic senates, because I think if we're going to talk about what makes efficient academic senate subcommittee structures, we have to ask ourselves what the end game is. And that's the purpose of an academic senate. So I want to look at what the regulation says. I know this will be reviewed for probably all of you, but I want to look closely at what Title V says about the function of academic senates and about collegial consultation, and then separate that from union purview, because of course there's a little bit of overlap, but these are really different scopes of work that your collective bargaining group does as opposed to what you do here in academic senate. Then I want to look at some typical college committee organization, look at a few other colleges, and then just based on your resource guide and your academic senate bylaws, which I think are the most public documents that kind of explain how committees work at SBCC, at least that I could find as an outsider, look at how it's shaped at SBCC and ask you to share your impressions about how well that structure works and discuss and brainstorm with you. And that's where I really want to get, is to the end of the presentation, which can be a discussion the whole time. Because I've heard a lot from Rayanne, and I know what I can see in the attachments, the liaison reports, the publicly facing documents, but I really want to hear from all of you also about how you feel that committee structures are working at SBCC, so that before the end of the term, you know, with your permission and Rayanne's permission, I can hopefully come back one more time and share new ideas, hopefully informed by more than just Rayanne and my perspective. So that's our plan for the time we have. And feel free again to chime in at any time, okay? All right. All right, so this is too easy of a question. It's written everywhere, all over all of your materials. I think I might have even seen it in the packet today, but in California, what's the primary purpose of a community college's academic senate? And you could answer this, creatively or personally, but I'm actually, the answer I want is the regulatory answer, because there is an answer, right? In Title V. What's the primary purpose of an academic senate? What is all of this about? If we're going to talk about how well our committees work, our Senate subcommittees in particular, how efficient they are, if we're going to have some kind of conversation about institutional effectiveness, it has to be centered on a purpose, right? So what's the purpose of academic senates? Come on, this is easy. If we were in person, I'd be throwing candy bars at you guys for right answers. But since it's Zoom, you just get my admiration and gratitude. Anybody want to answer the question? Easy question, right? You're like, it's so obvious, Jeffrey, that I don't want to embarrass myself by answering it in front of the group. Can see Dr. Scott laughing at me. Anybody, what's the purpose? What are academic senates for? What's their job? What's their main job? Oh, I think Trisha's raising her hand.
10+1.
Oh wait, was that Kathy? Did I hear
Yeah,
my friend
10 plus
Kathy's
1.
voice?
10 plus 1.
Yes, right. What about 10+1 though?
Oh, you're a bad guy.
Ah,
We have to make sure that we are consulted, that we are primarily involved in certain things like curriculum. And so we have to make sure that there is a participatory governance structure at our college.
very well said, Kathy. And I heard collegial consultation. I heard primarily involved with curriculum, which is true at every college I looked at, but that's also a rely primarily for SBCC per your resource guide. And Kathy, it's great to hear your voice. I never thought I'd say this, but it's been too long since you and I were in a meeting together.
I know, I miss you
used to be
too,
all the
Jeffrey.
time. Trisha, were you going to
I'll
approach
see
the
you in
question?
April.
Okay, great. Trisha, were you going to approach the question differently?
No, I was going to say the 10+1, and in addition, the curriculum, ensuring, student success, keeping a focus on that, and making sure that the faculty voices are heard and that the president and the board, gets our input.
Excellent answer. Yeah. And student success is the most important part of 10+1, but you're right. It's also presenting the faculty voice on that. And there's specific section of the regulation that ensures the academic senate's right to always appear before the board of trustees. So you're right. And in most governance structures, that looks like a recommendation to the superintendent president. It isn't always the case. The regulations say we can appear right before the board. So you're absolutely right. Great answers. Any other answers on this way too easy question? I'm throwing you a virtual almond joy right now, hoping that you're not allergic or something. So yeah, you guys nailed it, of course. And then I should have put quotations around this. I am an English teacher. How dare I use direct quotation without signaling quotation marks to show that the words are from the regulation, but to make recommendations to the administration of a college and to the governing board of a district with respect to 10+1, as you guys said. So that's what we're for. We exist to make policy recommendations on 10+1 issues. And there are some very specific tasks that were elsewhere in regulation charged with, like in another section or subsection of 53200, assigning faculty to committees like you all just did with that item on your consent agenda. And others that are mutually agreed upon. But this is what senates are for, to make policy recommendations, right? And so that should, I think, be the kind of gauge or divining rod we use to ask ourselves, well, how good of a job are we doing, right? So the 10+1, you have it memorized or tattooed, or you have a little card in your wallet that ASCCC gave you. And here they are. Which ones, well, at SBCC, the first, I think, from your governance or your resource guide is something that your district normally primarily relies on you for. But here are the 10+1. And here's the definition of collegial consultation. This is another subsection from the same section of Title V. Remember that when we talk about collegial consultation, as Kathy alluded to, that can happen in two ways per the regulation, right? There can be a situation in which the district or governing board relies primarily upon the policy recommendation that the academic senate makes. Or there can be the number 2 here, which is called mutual agreement or jointly agree, right? Where they don't have to rely primarily on the recommendation that we make, but they could say, present us with a different option instead. And there's a different regulatory basis for that. So in areas of the 10+1 that SBCC has designated, we're going to rely on recommendations of the academic senate. The board would only ever reject your recommendation in those areas for exceptional reasons or compelling circumstances. And if they did so, they would have to provide you a written explanation for rejecting the recommendation. I know you guys know that because it's in your governing documents, it's in your resource guide, and I think it's in your constitution too. But on all those other areas where you and your board have decided, actually, these are areas in which we're going to try to reach mutual agreement or jointly agree, the board can say, no, give us something else. We don't like this recommendation. Give us a different recommendation. And they're not legally required to give you a written explanation. So both of these are collegial consultation, but areas of the 10+1 which the board primarily relies on your recommendation, the board will legally have to treat differently than areas in which you decided you guys are going to mutually agree. Does that make sense? That's a review for folks, right? I don't want to spend too much time here because I know you're more concerned about committee structures, but I think it's important in any conversation. So I guess maybe I've already kind of given you the answer a couple of times, but at SBCC, of those 10+1, right, which ones are rely primarily and which ones are mutually agree? And this is just good old BP 2510, taken straight from your website that you guys know. But look at what 2510 says if you haven't looked at it in a while. It says that you're going to follow the law, right? That you're going to they'll either rely primarily on your recommendation or they'll rely on mutual agreement, right?
Can I just jump
So
in?
if you, yeah, please, yeah.
So for our senators, this has been an item that has been on our agenda for a couple of weeks, BP, this BP. And this recommendation came to us through the A4A committee, the accreditation for whatever, another acronym, another committee. But it is, in our BP, it's never been delineated which is which. And so that was a recommendation that came to our committee and something that actually Dr. Helen Benjamin impressed upon me even before it came out of that committee, that, it's not clear at SBCC which it is, and that it just kind of quotes the law. And at other colleges, it says, yes, 10+1, but like these are rely primarily on, and these are, the other one, mutual agreement, whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
So I think that,
or jointly agree. It's sometimes.
Yeah. So this is like, I'm really glad that Jeffrey included this in his presentation, because I hope him mentioning this and asking this question and then thinking about us updating our own BP, which one, like when we bifurcate this or when we delineate these, whatever the right word is, which ones do we want in which category? And are we going to update that BP? And I hope that we are. And so it's been hanging out on our agenda, and this is the work before us. So when we finally get to it, that's how we're going to hopefully change the board policy.
I think it's great to regularly revisit this too, especially when you have a transition in Senate leadership coming, and it's good for everyone to remember that this is what we do. This is why the processes matter. And it is publicly available. We can figure out, like, if we follow the the documents that are up. I've only put the BP up here, but the AP says that, you know, it'll be delineated in the resource guide. And it is, and it, you know, it basically says curriculum. So your resource guide, but I know that the resource guide is updated annually. And I think I can see the logic of doing it the way that you've done it, right? APs, the superintendent president can update at her discretion, but hopefully you are making recommendations to her on those APs that relate to 10+1. That the AP says, see the resource guide, and here's the language I found in the resource guide, which it looks like says curriculum, right? The district relies primarily upon the academic senate for recommendations for new courses, changes or revisions to existing courses, or other modifications of curriculum, right? And CAC approves those before they go to the bot, and then before you guys go through the legal processes for curricular approval. So yeah, you can find it, but the BP says, you know, says this, the AP, which I linked, but you're probably familiar with, refers to the resource guide. And then I know you guys have a process of updating your resource guide pretty regularly. But great to hear that A4A is looking at that. And just looking at a few other colleges, I noticed that San Jose Evergreen does something very, very similar to what SBCC is already doing. So their administrative procedure also refers to their governance handbook, which is, you know, a lot like your resource guide. And theirs has curriculum and academic standards. And those are usually the two that at minimum I'll see when I can find these areas delineated in APs or governing documents. I really like how Foothill De Anza did it, though. It's just very clear and might help future Senate leaders. So you might want to ask A4A to take a look at theirs. I've hyperlinked it here so you can follow, but they've got a nice little chart that lists the rely primarily on one side and the mutually agree on the other. And they've got curriculum, degree and certificate requirements, grading, standards for student preparation and success, and policies for faculty professional development, all as rely primarily, with the others being mutually agree. And I think you can see why, from a district or administrative perspective, and I don't want to speak for your administrators, but I think you can see why lots of superintendent presidents, admins probably feel like, yeah, these are areas where we safely feel like primarily relying on the academic senate's judgment is probably a good thing when we're talking about policies for faculty professional development, or, you know, grading policies and curriculum. No one knows better than the faculty, than the academic senate. And then I used my own, of course, because it was just easy and close by. Ours is really similar to Foothill De Anza's, but we don't get to have standards for student preparation and success just for us, because we've got lots of governance council subcommittees who make recommendations around that, you know, related to broad areas about student success as well too. I think that's why. But typically you'll see at minimum curriculum and academic standards or grading as rely primarily, if you look at some of these documents. And it's helpful to review because, especially if you had the same Senate president for a long time, or there were changes in administration, which are really common in all the California community colleges right now, just this is our purpose and this is the process for what that looks like. So I saw in your liaison report that you're having a really good discussion right now. I can't remember if it was in CAC or COI about changing one of your policies or procedures because of the forthcoming Title V changes around distance education that I know Kathy and Lori are really well versed in. But I wanted to ask you guys, Rand's kind of already addressed this a little bit. Say we're having a conversation about collegial consultation. How well do you think SBCC does this through its subcommittees and through your whole college-wide participatory governance process? How well does the SBCC Academic Senate fulfill your primary purpose, which is making policy recommendations on 10+1 issues? Is this something that you're good at? And is this something that the current committee structure, especially with regard to those Senate subcommittees, you think works well? I want to hear from you guys because I don't know. I mean, it's a subjective question anyway, but I think if you're going to talk about refining your committee structures further, especially since you refer to them in both your constitution and your bylaws, right? Your constitution says that rules for committee structures are reflected in the bylaws. You guys have that whole list, not just of your Senate subcommittees, but of 2 other groups of committees in your bylaws. If you're going to talk about doing that, which, you know, Rayanne and I have been, she's been sharing her impressions, and I've been reading your agendas and packets. To me, this is the most important thing. How well is the Senate working right now in terms of what Title V says we're supposed to do? Ruth, what do you think?
I certainly think this has improved over the past few years under Rayanne's leadership. I think there's still a ways to go. We need to revisit, for example, our constitution, which we tried to update it, and it was a difficult task. I think in part it's also that we need, although I know this body has tried to reach out and get other voices, and certainly this Senate is much different than what's been the norm over, you know, years and years. We definitely brought more folks to the table. I think we still need to do more of that. And there are still instances in which this process, and I'm not saying it's Senate, but just across the board at this college, is circumvented. And so that's unfortunate. It still occurs, and sometimes we find out kind of late. Sometimes we have enough time to, you know, put a halt to it. Or, you know, if something's already been decided, you know, letting folks know how next time around, you know, it needs to come through the shared governance process. But it's not perfect. It's getting better, but we've got a long ways to go before I say we actually achieve this the way we should be.
I'm writing down what you've said in my own shorthand, but basically wanting more broad input, right? And then concerns about the process being circumvented. And remember, and I don't know if Dr. Scott wants to chime in, but it may be a little different at lots of institutions, but at lots of institutions, your college, probably through the Office of the Superintendent President, has a subscription to the CCLC. You had a league representative visit you in your collegiality and action visit service, where they give templates for BPs and APs. And often I think the league there is really just checking against changes in the law, changes in statute and regulation, or anything that requires an update to the league template. And of course, your college leadership wants to make sure that its policies and procedures are legal, right? So there's an onus on the Senate to remember that it's our responsibility, right, to make those recommendations on 10+1 areas. So that's why your academic policies committee, or the A4A that Rayanne mentioned, may be very, very important, right? But you have other committees too who have specific focus in one area. Robbie, thanks for being patient. I'm sorry if I got too chatty there.
No, not at all. My little contribution to answer your question would be that our campus seems really, really resistant to change, that this is how we do things, and so don't disturb that. Right. And it's backed up by this idea that we are special. And so this is why we do it, because we're special. And
we as in
the whole campus. Like
SBCC.
we're special among community colleges. And so we have to do things the way we do them, and don't disturb that.
Yeah. Well, SBCC is a special place, but you're right.
Every place is special, but yeah, that's what I'll say about that.
Yeah, and I completely agree. This is something Rayanne and I have been talking about a lot. And I can't remember, someone shared I think one of my colleagues for some local work I'm doing shared an EdSource article with me about intellectual property, because we were thinking about academic freedom as it relates to online ed, and the author had written, faculty are notoriously resistant to change. I think that's true of a lot of people, right? But also faculty, we get used to something. That's the way it works. It's very idiosyncratic. Maybe in the beginning there was this clean, simple vision, but new needs arose. Or you had a committee whose main job was to write a report like the basic skills report, right? That was required for many years by the chancellor's office. This was something they had to do. And then what happens when to that committee when the report is no longer required, or a committee you wouldn't think might get tasked with a certain job does. And so what might have looked like, a clean, efficient design 30 years ago or pre-AB 1725, different committees.
The internet.
Yeah,
Sorry.
yes. So yeah, I think those are really real barriers that we have to acknowledge. And at the same time, there's a reason that we're resistant to change, right? I mean, one of them is if you're like me and you're getting older and your blood pressure is going up, maybe it's a little bit scary to change. And we've all just had to live through such incredible, tremendous change. But the other question is the change merited? Is there really anything wrong with the system now? Is there really anything wrong with the status quo now? Like, yeah, we could redesign it and go through all these processes, right, to get rid of these, combine this, but is the current one working? And I feel like that's where we should really start in terms of having a conversation about potentially redesigning your committee structure. Is the status quo working now? Are you guys regularly making good policy recommendations on 10+1 stuff, which Ruth said has gotten better, but there's room for improvement? And you've pointed out, Robbie, I think the big thing, right? It's always hard. It's always hard to change. And there's this sense of, yeah, but only SBCC has these programs, has this configuration, does things this way. Did you have more, Robbie? Or
yeah, I just wanted to comment on something you just said. I think you hit the nail on the head that we need to decide if something a change is proposed, you have to decide whether the change is warranted. And that's what it comes down to. And I think a lot of the changes that have been proposed in the 3 years that I've been on Senate have been newer ideas, unfamiliar concepts perhaps to people who've been around for a long time, but specifically a lot of them have been more equity focused and more student focused than a lot of practices or changes that were proposed in the past. And I feel like the resistance to change often coalesces around those things.
Okay. And that would, you wouldn't be alone in that, right? Thank you. And I know Ellen's been waiting for a bit, but if I could just comment on Robbie's, like I said, when I was new Senate president, I had this task of I had to fix the Constitution and bylaws, right? In my college, I took it really, really seriously. I didn't want to get it wrong. And so I brought every potential decision and change to my academic Senate, made sure that they were deciding what the shape of the Senate was going to be, and had to form this new Senate council we hadn't had before, did all these things, these very idiosyncratic and particular procedures in our bylaws that wouldn't make sense to anyone else, but seemed like they were the only fix for us for this one issue. And I was Senate president for 4 years, and then we got a new Senate president, and she's fantastic, and the first thing she said was, we've got to change this and make this better. I thought, I've just got to sit on my hands and not say, but we worked so hard to get it this way because I want the new Senate president to lead. But it was that same sort of sense of being hard to let go. Ellen, you've been so patient. Please.
Sure. First, I agree with everything Ruth and Robbie said. The resistance to change thing, especially, is a big one. I've also noticed, I feel like there's a lot of spinning wheels that happens on our committees, like a lot of conversations and talk, and not always the most efficient results maybe. And I know that's those conversations can be really valuable, but if they're happening in all of these silos of different committees, like those conversations are not necessarily what gets shared more broadly with the Senate as a whole. And so we're sharing, smaller, like, oh, we did this one thing, but we had this other conversation. And what I've really noticed, especially this year, because I've been on this Senate steering for the first time, is so I'm participating in more of those spaces and also hearing from other steering committee members it seems like there's a lot of duplication of effort and even different committees working on the same thing at cross purposes. or a committee sort of in their own vacuum, making a decision about something that affects all faculty, and then expecting the Senate to just sort of sign off on it rather than, I feel like there's a way that there's not enough involvement throughout the process. Yeah, I guess I was going to give an example, but I'll just stop there for now.
You can if you want, except I'm going to leave it up to you. We still got an hour, right? So we're good.
Okay. No, that's okay. Talk later.
Okay, I'd like to comment on those, Anna, if you don't mind waiting until I do. So first of all, I guess at the risk of sounding redundant and being an old faculty member who's resistant to change, I think there's some value to spinning wheels, especially if we're having a conversation that would have been controversial when I was hired 15 years ago, but isn't anymore. So, like Robbie said a little while ago about newer ideas over the course of some of our careers around student equity or anti-racism, the chancellor, of course, has tasked us to look at equity in everything we do, and so has ASCCC through an awful lot of positions that the faculty have taken, a lot of resolutions that have been adopted. And I think you have, obviously, from reading your liaison report. So sometimes what feels like a spinning wheel in one committee can actually be a really big change to one or two people who are sitting in the room and saying, but wait, we never did this way before. I still am getting used to that. And I think that applies to duplication of effort too, because something like equity has to be infused in the work of every committee, right? We all have to be thinking about, regardless of the committee we sit on, we have to be thinking about our district and our system and our personal conviction to equity. But that's not the same thing as a duplication of effort, where you have two different committees both trying to write the same plan, not talking to each other, and not in conversation with each other. About what you said about the expectation of things just going to the Senate and being approved, I know that there's language, I've quoted it in one of the later slides in the presentation. I know that there's language in your constitution about this, your subcommittees really being beholden to the academic senate itself, and the academic senate being responsible. But of course, that's always hard when there is a difference of opinion. And I certainly have chaired committee meetings like that, where a group of really visionary, passionate faculty have brought forward, say, hey, we want to make this change, we think it's really good, and then the motion failed by like 2 votes, and they were just so upset, and they'd put together an ad hoc task force of their own. It wasn't even their committee assignment, they volunteered and done this work for weeks, and the motion didn't pass, but it still advanced. It still advanced the conversation. And I've got to say too, about feeling like this stuff happens in a vacuum and that the conversations aren't widespread enough. I love your liaison reports, but they're lengthy, right? And aside from the academic senate, you're not really sure how many faculty are reading those, right? So those are all really important points, and I wanted to kind of address each of them, because I think they're all important when you think about the structure you have now of the subcommittees really making recommendations to the academic senate, and how the information gets shared. Anna?
Yeah, hi. So I am the part-time rep, and so I don't participate in as many of the committee spaces. But just based on what I've gathered, I am the VP, so I do also sit on steering, and I hear a lot of the feedback and read the liaison reports and all of that good stuff. So just wanted to name that's one of the pieces informing my input. And also I want to come out as a radical faculty member who wants to change everything to serve our most vulnerable people on campus. So that's the other. And so before I share my feedback, I wanted to also invite some of our newer members who are especially coming from other institutions. I personally would love to hear what your experience has been on your institutions, and then in comparison to how things are here. I feel like we don't often hear from our newer folks, so I just want to openly invite folks to speak. And now on to my comments. So the first piece I think is what Ellen named about duplication of efforts, and even sometimes lack of clarity around what committees are doing, and wondering if there's mechanisms for like accountability or report outs of committees, because I think for me, one of the things that can be most frustrating is the amount of time that people spend in committees and what feels like disproportionate outcomes or output from committee spaces. So I would love to hear a little bit more about maybe what that looks like. I'm also, the Constitution piece has come up, and as one of the two people on Senate who really tried to make those changes happen and, updated all of the changes that need to be made, and then the inability to even just resolve typos that have been in our Constitution from the beginning. I'm wondering if like shredding it and starting over is something that's possible, reasonable. Obviously what that new process would look like should include a lot of voices and should have faculty feedback and many opportunities to contribute. But the current Constitution, I do not believe will ever be able to be edited, because we have tried it over and over and over, and the standard is so high that it's just not there. And so like, for me, that's one of the challenges. And then I randomly read somewhere recently that like many countries revisit their constitutions every 10 to 15 years and make edits to them and change that kind of stuff. And it just seems wild to me that at SBCC we can't even fix typos in our Constitution. So those are some of the things that are coming up for me in this discussion.
Okay, I'm gonna stop my share, but I want to reshare this again later. I just want to open my browser. So I want to share something else because I've got your governing documents open. Well, I've got, as Rayanne knows, I tend to keep a lot of tabs open on my computer. So I wanted to speak to, well, actually, before we get to this stuff, congratulations, good for you, not only for representing part-time faculty and for being in a leadership position of faculty, but for being a radical faculty member. Older senior faculty members like me need you to refresh our perspective and remind us that what was state-of-the-art teaching or processes when we were hired maybe isn't reflective of the time. So greatly appreciated. And I'm hearing from now, I think 3 of you, that duplication of efforts is an issue. I wanted to bring up your Constitution and bylaws because you talked about the perceived, well, you didn't say lack of accountability, you said lack of clarity, right? And being concerned about mechanisms for accountability or report outs, I assume from committees. So you do have this specific language, right, in Article 7, and Rand's talked to me a little bit about this before. This could be something that could be potentially considered. And I had a question for you guys about your comment. I remember, reading the minutes around the efforts to change the Constitution last time around, and then hearing Rhiann's impressions. Is it correct that at SBCC, to update your Constitution and bylaws, you have to have what the documents call a plenary in order to do that? at SBCC, it's more difficult to update your constitution and bylaws than it is for you guys to just pass regular motions or resolutions, correct? Robbie's telling me yes, that's the case. And but I mean, I understand that comes from a good place. And when I was looking at all the different constitutions and bylaws, so many years ago, trying to get new ones for us, I saw something similar, not necessarily a plenary, but that at least, a 2/3 supermajority in lots of cases was needed for folks to update them, and multiple readings, because if we keep changing our structure, if we keep changing the rules, and if we keep changing the rules for how we make rules, right, that could potentially be disruptive. But it's, I think, just like my example I shared earlier about my task force at Taft, who had worked so hard on this proposal and then it failed by 2 votes. I think that their proposal did move the conversation that much closer. And when that idea came back around the next time, it was informed by the recommendations they made. So, I mean, it sounds like 3 of you, right, are talking about duplication of effort, and there's still a desire to refine these a little bit further. I didn't want to shut down the conversation, but I want to go back to my PowerPoint. Let's see, where were we? We were in the discussion of the first section. Okay. Did that work? Are we back in the PowerPoint?
Yep, you're back in the PowerPoint.
Anybody else want to chime in on that before we move forward? Got about 50 more minutes, I think, right? Like all the time is ours. Did you guys already handle the rest of the business? Okay.
Actually, can I chime in for just a second?
Yeah.
I really loved Anna's idea about just shredding the Constitution and starting over. Is that ever done?
Well, I can tell you, I mean, I don't want to commit I teach English and rhetoric. I don't want to commit the hasty generalization fallacy of just give you one example. But my experience was when I was president-elect, and this is when I met Kathy O'Connor. It was like spring of 2015, and our outgoing president took me to this thing called plenary, and he was like, "This is my friend Kathy. You've got to meet her." We had at Taft College 2 different constitutions from 2 different years, and there were parts of the old one that we were still using that conflicted with the new one, and parts of the new one that we were using. So it was just decided by the Senate that, whoever and the Senate actually voted on this, that whomever we elect to be the Senate president will have to work this out. And that's why it was like my summer job to figure it out before I chaired my first meeting. And that's what we had to do, because we had 2 documents that were in conflict. And our practice had been that we certainly weren't following the most current one in its entirety. And so that's what we did. And as a new Senate leader, I just made sure that I was doing lots of research, like that Excel spreadsheet, right? But I was just bringing stuff back to them and having them vote by majority. What do you guys want? Until we agreed on something. It took a semester for us, and we've changed it since then a little bit. But that was certainly the case, for us. But it was out of necessity, because we had conflicting constitutions, and we had been, as a matter of practice, picking and choosing until I think like the Senate president before me was like, that we have this this document that says how we're supposed to be arranged. So, I mean, I think there's specific Title V. It's in the local Senate handbook. I could pull it for you if you want, but it empowers you to create an academic senate, which you already have, and for your board to approve it, which you already have, and for the Senate to determine its procedures for how you do business. There's some things that don't change. You still have to follow the Brown Act, for example. You still are limited to the authority that's within the 10+1 or other things that your district agrees to in those few other sections. But yeah, your academic senate could decide, we're starting over. This is too complicated. There were too many little tweaks as needed along the years. You really could approach that however you want. Now, remember, you're using Roberts, and your bylaws and constitutions say that, right? Say that you're using Roberts Rules of Order. I think your constitution also says that if there's a conflict, the procedures in your Constitution and bylaws trump Robert. I think I remember reading that in your local documents. So you would need to adhere to that process as closely as possible, but I don't see why you couldn't. I mean, think about it. You do it in curriculum committee, don't you? Right? Sometimes course modifications are really striking through almost everything in the course and just recasting it fresh to still meet the CID descriptor. You probably did it with pieces of curriculum when CIDs were new, I would guess. So I think, yeah, you could, but you would have to do it according to or you should do it, right, according to the rules that you have in place now. And it would be difficult because you've made it difficult in your existing rules to update your constitution and bylaws, which isn't necessarily a bad thing.
Well, that's the thing. The reason why our constitutional changes failed is because we didn't get enough faculty voting.
Right.
So we wouldn't be able to just write a new one if it depended on the rule that we had to get all the same
Right.
threshold of faculty participation.
I wonder if that's going to be easier. Well, I don't want to make any assumptions about COVID, because every time I think I see a light at the end of the tunnel, it seems like it gets eclipsed. But I wonder, I know a lot of folks have been struggling with participation because we've changed how we do our work and how we show up for meetings, you know what I'm saying? So often for us, if it's allowable in however you do your flex calendar, often for us, we have what's called a Senate of the Whole. And when I made that list in 2015, there were only like 9 other colleges in the state that still did that. So all of the Taft College full-time faculty are members of the Senate. And any adjuncts who say they want to join in the first 2 weeks of each semester, which makes quorum like really, really hard. We wrote into for that reason, this is one of those weird rules you'd look at and say, that doesn't make sense. We wrote into our constitution and bylaws that quorum is 1/3 for us, because otherwise we wouldn't make quorum most of the time. And we have meetings where we need lots of people to vote during our in-service period of the academic calendars. I don't know if that's allowable in how you've structured your flex days or flex time or in service, but we do that. So when we have to make really big decisions, we know that everyone's on campus and no one's teaching. And otherwise it's really hard with the Senate of the Whole. So we really lean on the
I
Senate.
don't think we can do that unless there's a lot of strategizing ahead of time, because our required in-service days, flex days, are usually the 2 days before the semester starts.
Yeah.
The way constitutional changes come about is like by petition at the Senate, and then within X many of days, you need to have, at a regular Senate meeting, you need to have the suggested changes highlighted and a document prepared.
Yeah.
So,
If you guys,
maybe for the spring ones, if like the fall Senate was like on top of this and timed
Yeah.
it perfectly, but like, I'm not even sure because the timeline is so strict. But I heard Robbie's question a little bit differently. I mean, I don't know what this would look like, but like, could there be a motion of the Senate to say, like, could this happen? Like, the Senate recognize, or like even by a resolution or something so that people can chime in, but like the Senate recognizes that there's many typos and contradictory statements in our current constitution, and there seems to be, faculty buy-in for change. We resolve to, completely throw out what we have and start anew. Is that something that the Senate moving forward could consider and do?
I wouldn't, I mean, you could, but I wouldn't think so. And I think we'd have to consult Robert, because you invoke Robert in your governing documents, right? But a resolution in Robert's Rules of Order is a main motion, and it typically, unless it reverses a position of the body or in other special circumstances, I mean, it typically only requires a simple majority. I think what's interesting here about the way that you've structured your plenaries for the voting for the changes to the Constitution and bylaws is you're asking a certain percentage of all of the faculty, right? to participate in that process, but they're not, no, Rand saying no, that's not the case.
Only full-time faculty. We don't allow part-time faculty
Okay.
to participate, and it's a certain percentage of full-time faculty.
But not just the senators, right? That's the distinction. Yeah. And I think that's the lift. That's the challenge. I mean, have academic senates acted in conflict with their constitution and bylaws? Certainly. I gave you a personal example of what it was like for us in 2015, right? When we had two. Worse things have happened, right? But I think, in my opinion, it's best to follow the rules that are in place, to change the rules, because your faculty did vote on those, right? They did agree to those, and that's what, those are your local documents. I would encourage you to, I like Rand's idea of, if a group in spring developed changes and then promoted them for fall, and really got the word out to faculty, this is really important, we need you to vote. Also, because you have all the, well, that'd be an interesting thing to look at too. Just thinking, because you have all the full-time faculty but have the opportunity to vote or be part of that. It's not the same rules for voting that would apply under Brown for a legislative body, because the faculty aren't the academic senate. You guys are the academic senate. You see what I mean? I saw a couple more hands. I've got Trisha and Anna again.
Yeah, so my question is, do you have any recommendations? It sounds like building buy-in from faculty,
Yeah.
and having them think of, understand why this is important. Would start with, listening, because I like, what misunderstandings might they have about something that we're gonna be voting on? I mean, this is kind of a silly example, but the whole typo, like they couldn't even agree on typos. Was it about the typos, or was it something larger that we don't know that we need to ask about? Like, why would anybody not vote to correct grammar? Maybe it wasn't. Maybe it was concern about the changing of the pronouns, and that's still something that, so I guess a deeper issue. So I think we want to, start buy-in by listening first, and then, then knowing how to maybe adjust our message. But what buy-in needs to start really early, not at the vote on this thing. So what are your recommendations for building buy-in?
I think you already have it in the system that you have in place, right? Because the issue is getting enough full-time faculty to vote at all, right? So that they can decide. Did I understand Robbie correctly in that? Yeah. And I see in the existing government documents, you have really healthy, as you can see from the turnout of the meeting. I mean, for a representative Senate, you guys have really healthy representation. So your existing governing documents say that those senators are supposed to promote conversation within their individual constituencies. Yeah. And this could just be as simple as, hey, you guys, you really need to vote on this, or this isn't going to happen. I told you we're a Senate of the whole, right? So we had a special meeting yesterday, and we were like 9 faculty away from quorum. And so the Senate president was like, please, go out in your hallway, just try to get people to log in so we have quorum. We were physically doing that. I was running out, hey, Kyle, hey, Becky, could you guys please join? We're 9 away from quorum, which isn't ideal. But I imagine that you, as senators, since you represent a department, yeah, and some of you multiple ones from the same area, can promote that in your department meetings, as long as a majority of you aren't having the conversation together about the business or how to vote. If you guys are acting as elected representatives to your constituencies, it's not a Brown Act violation for you to say, it's really important that you vote at the upcoming plenary, or else we can't consider changes to the Constitution and bylaws at all. And you don't have to sell them on how to vote, right? You've just got to get them to do it. Do I understand the problem correctly?
Yeah, that was the expectation, that senators would be the champions of this process and bring it out to their divisions to promote this and to whoop it up and to say, for the love of God, just please vote. Like, and then also, you know, it takes 2 seconds, like 15 seconds, but then also to explain the Senate's position on these things, whether it be pronouns, or, you know, or the reasoning behind certain decisions. That's also what the plenary is for. So the plenary is to have that open conversation in a forum. And actually Anna and Ellen led it, you know, to have people ask, and then have the architects of the, you know, proposed revisions explain the rationale and the Senate's position, and why, you know, where else are we, you know, where is this coming from, and why do we want to do this? So I think that we do have those mechanisms in place. You know, whether or not they're effective, I think is another conversation, right? But that was the recommended and suggested procedure throughout, like, that time, and it just didn't happen.
And remember too, as Rayanne and I have talked about a lot since the end of October, each of you personally, your academic senate, your students, your system, your state, higher education in America is under incredible strain, right? We have a nationwide enrollment decline for community colleges. People have been having to meet and work in different ways. Divisions of your math and science division have been working hard with your institutional research office on that new AB 705 validation report, for example, right? There's so much going on. There's so much stress. So the way that the opportunities you have to get that message across are maybe different, but that might be the place where each of you as senators can step up and go back to your department and say, hey, we have this plenary coming. It's really important that you participate. Anna, did you have another comment before we go on? We did have like 2 more big chunks I wanted to get to. We went really deep on the first one, which is fine with me, but Anna?
Yeah, I do actually, because I think this is a perfect example of why it's so hard to exist in these spaces. Because it's not working, right? Like, this constitution isn't working. There has been multiple efforts to try and change it, and we can do that. And so, yeah, it just stifles, I think, the interest in wanting to participate, because it feels very rooted in upholding white supremacy culture. And a lot of the stuff, Trisha, I saw you or heard you when you named the comment about the typos. It didn't not pass because people voted it down. It didn't pass because we didn't get enough votes. And we really went above and beyond, emailing people, trying to connect with them. Again, this has happened multiple years in a row before COVID was a thing. It has also been attempted and hasn't changed. So I don't want us to sit here and think that COVID is the reason we didn't get the participation levels that we need to get. And I think that also potentially speaks to the bigger picture issue present on our campus, which is faculty are not participating. And there's a bunch of reasons that could be happening, and there's a bunch of different pockets of faculty that are not participating, but it is frustrating for me to sit and hear you have to make it work within your scope with whatever's in your constitution, even though it's been proven that that's not manageable. So I guess that's all I have.
Okay. Well, thank you for voicing that, but I just want to clarify, because what I thought I heard and tried to confirm that I heard was that not enough people voted at all. Is that correct? Okay. Yeah, so and I was just trying to relay that, like, as you said in your comment, there are differences, right, in participation right now, but there are a variety of ASCCC resources and resolutions that we've adopted that denounce white supremacy and which advocate for anti-racism and anti-racist education. So it could be that simply those resolutions could be marshaled to remind folks like, hey, this is what all of the faculty in the state have voted on. This is the position of ASCCC. But I was really just trying to speak to the participation piece.
So, but if we can just
Yeah.
pause right there for a second, I just
Yeah.
want to loop what you just said back to what Robbie said previously, which is SBCC is special. And so if we can expand on this idea for a second. So for years, our academic senate has not really worked with resolutions. And what I mean by that is like, I think like in the last year, the resolutions created under my tenure are more than literally all of the resolutions from like the past like 10 years like added together. You know, we meet, we discuss, we make motions, but they're not really formal resolutions the way that happened at the state senate. For years, only 1 or 2 people went to the state plenaries. And for years, it was a lot of the same people. And so a lot of the stuff that was happening at the state was not trickling back, was not coming back to campus at all, or not in any meaningful way. So I remember when I was, let's say, the dark horse and, you know, got elected as incoming Senate president and I got sent to the state plenary, I was blown away by what I heard. And I was really excited. And a lot of things sound contrary to like how we operate. And I don't think I'm the only one that experiences this. I think anybody that like comes to campus that works at other campuses, like comes to SBCC and is like, wow, you guys are weird. And so I think that that was a little bit to what, actually a lot of what Robbie was trying to speak to is like, there's this opinion that we're so special and we can do these weird things, right? Like, you know, I know you're going to get there, Jeffrey, but like NTCC, like why does the Senate like engage in basically like pseudo negotiation, right? Like why does this happen and why do we do it here? And it's like, well, there's this like air of like SBCC, like we're the #1 community college in the nation and we do all these, like we do these things and we're smart for doing them and it doesn't matter what other people are doing. So when you say that there's been a number of things at the state level and resolutions and seeing how the state talks about anti-racism and equity or even like zero cost textbook initiatives and things like that, a lot of those would be very radical for this campus and very controversial. And so while things are happening at the state level and we have that to rely upon and like point to and say, well, this is what's happening around the state, it hasn't been until like the last 2 years where that has overtly been brought back to the Senate for discussion. And our delegates of late have been doing a really good job of bringing all the resolutions back. And I think that it's been much more transparent. This is also, yeah. So, but we're still in this weird place of like, we have this like residual way of doing things. And I'll give you just a few more examples of this just so that we can speak to it in the meeting. So, you know, when we all went to COVID, when we all went socially distant because of COVID, knowing that I was hearing these things happening at the state level, I didn't want to be the gatekeeper. And I felt like people didn't really believe me, right? Like I heard this at the state level and I'm trying to bring it back and I'm trying to impress that upon people. And that felt very disorienting to me because it's like, well, I'm just saying it, right? So that's why last year I wanted all of the Senate to go, which was feasible because it was virtual and much cheaper. And so I wanted every single person on the Senate to go, to see that, to hear that, to engage in that, to know those resources available. But I would argue that we don't operate by resolution, and we haven't until very recently. And there is an air of specialness and weirdness at SBCC. One more data point for this. So as I look at other colleges around the state, California community colleges, Guided Pathways is owned by the Senate SLOs are owned by the Senate. Faculty professional development, owned by the Senate. I would argue at SBCC, none of those things are really owned by the Senate or taken up by the Senate. Guided pathways is completely outside of the Senate. You know, we've had presentations at the Senate of what's happening, but it's not like, there's not like, at other colleges, California community colleges, I feel like guided pathways there is a subcommittee of the Senate that runs that, right? And same thing with SLOs. SLOs have always like kind of existed outside of the Senate structure. Faculty professional development, same thing. You know, at other colleges, maybe the faculty professional development coordinator, whether they're full release time or partial release time, they like are on the Senate in an ex officio role or even Senate steering. We don't have those structures here. And again, I'm saying that because like, we just don't do them. And it's weird, right? Because to me, I feel as though like, we haven't been doing 10+1 for a really long time. Other than anti-racism hiring, I can't think of the last professional development that the Senate has had, faculty professional development that the Senate has developed or endorsed or discussed. So yeah, I just wanted to say those things. I see Robin's hand.
Yeah, that's a lot. Now, I've got to say though, that I have seen, you know, Lori and Kathy at, like I said, Kathy was at the first plenary I went to, and I think I've presented with both of them on breakouts at ASCCC plenaries around online ed and accessibility in particular. So I know that I have seen, you know, your faculty there, and there's this great resource I was trying to show you guys that whoever the next is, please like keep this tab open all the time. It's the local Senate's handbook. So really helpful advice about that exact issue Rand was talking about, like bringing the issues back and connecting up with ASCCC, which you guys have certainly done, right? With your local Senate visits, your collegiality in action visit. So that's a real struggle. In terms of resolutions, you don't have to use them, but you say in your governing documents that you use Robert's Rules of Order. Like in Robert's Rules, a resolution is a main motion, which will be voted on after subsidiary motions and amendments are considered and voted on. But lots of Senates don't use them. Their minutes show that they adopt a motion or approve an item, and that's how they communicate that the action was taken. Some Senates only use resolutions for certain really big things, but not for other things. The Senate handbook, the local Senate handbook gets into that. It's linked on that slide with the chart I showed you guys earlier. About the 10+1 areas, you're right. Remember, policies for faculty professional development is 10+1, right? So policies for faculty professional development activities. So it's not incumbent on you, the Senate, to create all the PD, but you are required to make those policy recommendations that relate to policies for faculty PD. Now, SLOs, in my opinion, as someone who was an SLO coordinator in 2007, SLOs always should be related to academic senate because of course their curriculum, right? Like what students can do. But I know at lots of institutions they're shared. I know that institutions have assessment offices that sometimes overlap with their institutional research and planning or institutional effectiveness divisions, but you make good points about that being curriculum, faculty needing to keep them, and guided pathways too. I think that lots of community colleges have taken that on as an institution-wide effort because it isn't just about curriculum, student success, but as I understand the guided pathways model, it's something that's supposed to really touch on every facet of the college and the student experience. But you're right, these are places that faculty need to assert themselves, and I completely agree about the ongoing need to keep bringing stuff back to your local faculty from the state. So I had hoped that we could talk about the difference between Senate and union purview, and that we could look at how some different colleges organize their committee structures, but this is all really helpful too. We've got a little queue, and I'm happy to take it if it's okay with you guys to spend the time that way. I think Robin may have had her hand up before Ellen, and you've been real patient, both of you. Really patient. I'm sorry, my current county vernacular is showed through there. Y'all been real patient with me. Sorry.
Yeah, there things keep coming up as I'm here, and so it's hard to make sure I keep everything straight. I do just give a thumbs up to what Ray was saying about our lack of involvement or our critical involvement in some major initiatives. I want to say that, you know, it's absolutely true that people like Kathy and Lori have represented our campus for decades at the Senate and an immense amount of work that I have a lot of respect for. But colleges change and have a lot of faculty, and we have had involvement beyond a couple of people for a couple of decades. And I think that that's not a healthy level of representation at the state level, just in general terms, in spite of, again, all due respect to the work that both of them have done. So going back to some previous comments, we have had a lot of change in the last several years on Senate in terms of a more diverse representation on various levels, and we have at involving ourselves in a lot of change. At our campus, in my experience, and I've been here for quite a while, is that we operate constantly under a sense of emergent haste and pushing things through, and not only been exacerbated by COVID, we also have had so many presidents and so many EVPs and change of administration in the last at least decade that we can for consistency and moving forward on things, but it becomes very challenging when new administration comes in and has their own agenda and their own methodology and doesn't try to work with the governance bodies. And going back to what Ruth said, I think that has really given rise to circumventing the shared governance process. Sometimes, like Ruth mentioned, finding out a decision has already been made. That does once in a while. That happens a lot. I should say has happened a lot over the past 5 years at least. So there are a lot of challenges when everything is changing all the time, and then you have the pandemic and everything else. I also would reiterate some of our these
I'm
functions.
losing you, Robin.
Sorry.
I lost you for a second there. Last thing I heard was some of, and then the connection went out for a second.
Oh, okay. So some of our committees, I would say, I agree, are functioning in their role, and some of our committees lost a sense of their role, maybe, or have lost connection with fulfilling their role, and it's given rise to this whole need to read the Constitution and redo our structure. Just get caught in the loop of Robert's rules and our Constitution and our process for changing it. So I just wanted to mention those other things that are challenges, I'm sure not only on our campus, but yeah.
Really valuable input. Thank you. And I don't know how many of you, well, probably has a really good perspective on this that she kind of alluded to earlier, but I don't know how many of you are, still tenure track faculty or newer faculty, but I know when I was a new hire in 2007, I didn't know the difference between the Senate and the Union. I just thought I was supposed to go to both, and sometimes they talked about the same things in both meetings, right? And it took a really long time for me to get acclimated to California Community College culture. So remember, as senators, right? What can you do to help explain this to people? Because you're special people that have this interest in doing this very detailed, highly nuanced work that you probably have colleagues that are completely unaware of. So, anyway, Robin, your input's really important. And also what you said about turnover that our system's been experiencing for quite some time in administrative positions, and colleges like mine are like lucky to hang on to one superintendent president for 5 years. Like, that's amazing, that kind of continuity. But remember, you're still going to be there when a lot of administrators won't, right? And that's why it's critically important that you understand the BP 2510, that you have a say in which of those matters are rely primarily, because you are the expert. And about things happening reactively, a Senate president's job is so hard. It's so incredibly stressful. It takes a very special kind of person, right, to be willing to do that work. But you're constantly having your eyes and ears open. You're on ASCCC listservs. You're trying to get the information, the news as soon as it breaks. The chancellor's office hasn't always been great about giving us lots of time to complete certain documents when they're requested. And so it really does take.
When you mention specific documents that have to be produced, this issue, we've had situations now where documents, major reporting documents have been produced in haste, and there's been a commitment made. The Senate, at the Senate president and the Senate's insistence, there's been a commitment made to an immediate relooking, because we recognize that the process was flawed and didn't produce the document that we anticipated. There's been a commitment to immediately read those and rewrite those, and each time that commitment has not met, and I think it was just called out recently that really erodes trust in that process of re-examination.
I think more cause to review your constitution and bylaws too, because I remember reading that like actions go into effect 10 days after they're voted, and then you have this petition process, right? It can be invoked to question positions that you guys have taken. But sometimes stuff really does come to a Senate president's desk like the day before someone says they need it. There's some great guidance in that local Senate's handbook that talks about sorts of documents we know we often have to sign, and which ones ASCCC recommends that the Senate review with vigilance, as opposed to those which the Senate president can just sign. But this is very, very hard, especially like you're always keeping an eye on the board agenda to make sure everything went the place that you thought it was going to. There's no surprises there. There's no surprises on the board agenda about a 10+1 issue that didn't come to a Senate or Senate subcommittee, not just locally, but from the chancellor's office too, in terms of specific reporting requirements. Any grants that you guys are associated with that touch on 10+1 is a lot. And so you're lucky you have that steering committee, but everyone kind of needs to help with that. And it's not always like the administrators trying to get one by on the faculty and sneak something through. It's the reality of how much work there is and how broad the 10+1 is. So, Rayan has, and your next Senate president will have this burden of always keeping their eyes open, constantly checking their email, making sure they're on the right list. Or sometimes as the Senate president, you see that ES from the chancellor's office at 11:58 p.m. or whatever before the president of the college does, right? Because the scope of your work is so broad. So Ellen's been waiting a long time. Do you want to? Oh, go ahead, Robin. If you want to continue, I want to try to hit two more things.
I want to wrap. I just wanted to be clear that it wasn't a question not having Senate review. It was a question of the Senate reviewing and raising objections. And
after the fact,
and a commitment being made to rewriting certain reports to reflect. It wasn't an effort. It was just the commitment was made that was not met, and likely because of lots of factors, but still.
Okay. No, thank you for sharing that. And I really like what you guys do with your reviewing your guiding principles, like norms at the beginning of the meeting. It's really important that we work to achieve that kind of trust in each other, and it isn't always easy. Thank you for being honest and brave and sharing that. Ellen?
I want to, actually something you said a couple minutes ago about being newer faculty and needing to get acclimated to the community college system and the ASCCC and the distinction between the union and the academic senate locally, all of those things. I wanted to come back to that, but also I wanted to pull together some of the points that that people have made, because I think they're related to each other. So
Okay.
the resistance to change, the idea that we're special here, and so therefore we should do things in our own way, and the power hoarding by the same people having leadership roles, often the same leadership roles for years or decades on end, and often not like a lack of communication with people who are not in that sort of elite group at either the local level or the state level. I think those things are all connected. And so this is my 11th year here, but I remember when I was new faculty and starting my committee service and going to committees and feeling like I didn't understand how this system worked. And if I ever questioned it or had, an idea, I was met with, these are the people who know, they know better than you. This is the way we've always done it. Like that kind of attitude that I think is related to the we're special and we always do things this way, and resistance to change. And I think a lot of that is rooted in white supremacy. If not most of it is rooted in white supremacy. And so I think those are all elements of these challenges that we've been talking about. And I've, now that I am in leadership roles and I've been here longer and I'm tenured, I'm not afraid to speak my mind. I talk to newer faculty who don't have tenure yet. And one thing that I hear all the time is being like not understanding how a particular committee works or should work, and being made to feel like it's sort of seeing something that's not working and being made to feel like it's their flaw for not understanding how the system works, or, rather than this is a broken system and you're identifying that and you have creative new ideas. And instead of the rest of us who have been here longer embracing that and being like, yeah, this is, like this is a possibility for change, we're thwarting that with the power hoarding and the we've always done it this way and the resistance, and the same people need to be in control. And that's one of the things I've really appreciated with Ray's Senate leadership, is her commitment to being transparent, really excellent communication, and involving a broader array of faculty, newer faculty who have been here a while but haven't been involved in the past, making sure that we're representing diverse voices and experience. All of those things I think are really important, but that also is like really goes against the grain at SBCC, I think. And so that's my take on some of what we've been talking about.
Thank you, Ellen. And I'd love to speak an awful lot about what you just said, but we only have 8 minutes, and there's some more points I want to make and an invitation I want to raise. But just really quickly, I think that your senior faculty probably know, I consider myself senior faculty, and I'm only in my 15th year, but I think that my Senate presidency, those 4 years, like aged me 10 years. So I considered myself like I should be able to order off the senior menu at this point. As senior faculty, I know that I want to support faculty leadership of newer faculty. And partly that's because I really love teaching and I want to do that. And I don't want to be in every meeting or be, consulted for every question about academic senate or Robert's rules. So there are really, I know I keep repeating it, but there are really great resources in the local Senate's handbook that I think all senators could benefit, that talk about succession planning, that talk about recruitment, that talk about some of the issues that you guys have have brought up. And again, as an outsider, it's really clear just looking at your Senate materials that student equity is very important to you, and the actions that your subcommittees are taking. I think an outsider can say that, but also as an outsider, you guys use a lot of acronyms, and a glossary would really help when other committees are dropping CPC, which does the new faculty member know that there's a college planning council? And that's just one. I mean, look at your liaison reports, guys. Like, if you want to make your college culture navigable to newer faculty, then make it so, help them and support them. But I want to kind of race forward. Like, Rayanne has this whole slide deck. There was a bunch of stuff I wanted to do that we didn't. I think that's okay because the discussion was really strong. But this Senate and union roles section, these are 7 slides from Dolores Davison and Wendy Wincoop. Some of you may have seen them at faculty leadership. I think this first slide is actually mine. Oh, whoops, I jumped to the wrong section. Sorry. Let me go back. Senate union roles. You can see in the notes to the citations, but these actually come from California Government Code. Very important to point out that once you have a collective bargaining agent for faculty, individual faculty can't be negotiating with the district, right? That's within the legal scope of the union. So from Government Code 3453.2, here's the scope of the union. Take a look at these. This is probably review to you. Do we have any union folks here with us today? We do have union folks, and that was one of the proposed changes too, right? To the Constitution and bylaws, where that you had, one of the suggestions was to have a union member, right? Specifically representing union on Senate. So important that those lines be clear, especially with the recent attachment that I saw in last month's Senate meeting for you guys about the non-teaching faculty compensation committee. That's classed as an operational group, right? But it says that the academic Senate president is the chair, doing something that to an outsider looks an awful lot like this. I know that you have that process documented in one of your APs. I hope that the union sanctioned that, that process in the long ago that the non-teaching faculty does, because that's not Senate work. So it's kind of tough that the Senate president is the chair of that committee, in my opinion. Thinking about the work that your committee is doing now and looking at BP and AP 2510 and the resource guide, here's some education code. The preamble at the beginning of the section of the code says that the Board of Governors ensures that this is happening at the local level, but minimum standards for grading and curriculum are things that the academic senate assumes primary responsibility. So these couple of citations on slide 515 might be helpful for you guys in that BPAP work. More info for Senate union, that there are some areas where we overlap. There's specific ed code that says that the Senate has to be consulted before the collective bargaining agent undertakes negotiations about faculty evaluation procedures. For instance, academic calendar is one that touches on both, because the calendar part is working condition, but because you guys are responsible for policies for faculty professional development, and PD is what the flex calendar is all about, which affects the academic calendar. There are these areas of overlap. So there are suggestions here from Dolores and Wendy from ASCCC and FACS. I'm not being outsider and using insider speak, about ways to try to firm that up. I wanted to have a big discussion about that too, but we've got like 3 minutes left. So then I did the rundown here. We can revisit it a later time, or you can refer to some of the stuff I think already came up, but I profiled for you ways that my college, where we have the academic senate recommending directly to the superintendent president, as opposed to the governance group recommending to the governance council, who recommends to the superintendent president, with the exception that at Taft College, we assert that Title V says the Senate can always speak directly to the board and be on the agenda because regulations say so. I showed you a couple of other colleges that use the college council model, I call it, where their governing documents encourage all the committees, even the Senate, to bring stuff to their governance council, which is really different than how we do business, right? At my college, where we recommend straight to the superintendent president, or we can speak to the board. But in some colleges, you see this college council model where, like at Mercosta 2, their governing documents, they're trying to have everyone bring their recommendations there before they go to the superintendent president. It takes longer Some of that stuff maybe isn't that group's to make recommendations on. Title V would say that it's yours. Org charts from 4 different colleges, so you can see how it works up the food chain. I'm really racing here because we have 4 minutes left. So I showed how at the end of the slide deck, this is stuff you guys have. This is what your resource guide says now. Your resource guide says that you have participatory governance groups, operational bodies and groups, and collective bargaining groups. But then it lists the Senate subcommittees in a separate part of your governance guide, which I think is kind of counterintuitive. Your bylaws list these in a different way. And you've already identified a bunch of things you want to change about your bylaws, but your bylaws break this down differently as Senate committees, educational program committees, and college-wide committees. I wanted to have this conversation. I think we hit on some of the points along the way, but there are answers to some of these questions in your bylaws, right? And look, so this is Article 7C and Article 7D. You can get rid of your Senate subcommittees, right, through the Senate. Those are yours with a supermajority. And some of the things that your Senate subcommittees have to do are there, as you guys know. So where I hope to get, now we have like a minute left. I'm fine to stay long, but I want to be respectful of your time. Where I hope to get was, I know this is listed as a discussion item today. I think you've said some of the things that at least 5 of you feel really strongly about, right? I want to know what I could do to help, because I'm still working with this coaching project with Rayanne until the end of the academic term. And we want to be able to make recommendations to you before then. So Rayanne and I have talked a lot. I wanted to see if other people wanted to be part of that conversation. I wanted to extend an invitation to folks to, attend arranged meetings myself, to work on possible suggestions. So we have I guess we're at 5 o'clock now. I'm happy to hang out if you guys are happy to hang out.
Can I
really learned a lot from those of you who've spoken. Yeah, go ahead.
Can I
Please, it's your
just
meeting.
maybe suggest something? We have a lot of faculty here and you're willing to stay. And so what if the Senate's meeting officially ends? And anyone that needs to leave can leave, and those that want to, I think.
If quorums stay, we have Brown Act problem.
Problem? Oh, because it's not a special meeting.
Well, if we're not meeting. If we end the meeting and then a majority of us keep talking about the business of the Senate, that's a problem. Right?
I suspected a majority will not stay.
But they're so excited. Look at these guys. Look at their tiles. They're like, it's 501. I don't love anything more than shared documents.
Maybe I'm wrong, but I suspect the majority of the Senate will not stay. And no, Chris, that's okay. Thank you though. So I suspect that part of it won't be a problem, and then maybe it can just be faculty that have questions for you. And
I'm happy to stay as long as you guys want.
Yeah.
My daughter's at a violin lesson right now. I'm clear. So.
All right, right on. Well, I think, senators, please thank Jeffrey, and, it's 5:01. And so anyone that wants to and needs to can get out of here. And I suspect that will fix our quorum problem. And thank you so much for being here with us. And then those that would like to stay and engage in conversation can and should.
Hey, thank you guys for your time and attention. Those of you who are leaving, I really am impressed by the work of your college and of your faculty. And I know these conversations are uncomfortable, but I think it's great that you guys are having them and that you have so many faculty, not just full-time faculty, but part-time faculty who are so concerned with your faculty leadership. I think it's great. Elizabeth, did you want to, I see your hand.
I just wanted to know if you're going to keep recording it, because I do have to go, but I kind of want to see what's talked about.
Yeah, sure. I just want to make sure that we don't have a quorum, and then we're all good.
Thank you.
Yep. So I do see some folks still on the So perhaps you have questions. I know like one thing that caught people's attention, Jeffrey, was that class caps being union purview was really surprising.
Yeah, and it's listed, so, you know, I don't know, 4 of those 7 or about in that section came from that presentation that Dolores Davison of ASCCC and Wendy Bro Wincoop gave, but there's a citation in the notes that you and I looked at when we met last week that shows you the exact section. It's California Government Code like 3543.2 that lists those out. And it makes sense, right? Because it's that's a working condition, especially if you grade papers, right? I mean, it's your work. They also listed it as a possible area of overlap. I thought they did. Maybe in the notes they did, as something that, you know, that could be discussed, where you could, you know, potentially see it happening, with both groups giving some input. But it's important to note the code there, right? This isn't just stuff that like Wendy and Dolores made up for a slide, right? Like there's the citation. I don't know if my screen share is still working. I've got the PowerPoint open. Do you guys see it? Okay, all right. So those are there, and you've got that slide deck. Other questions? Or?
Yeah, I mean, a number of you stayed. So what are the talking points? Ellen, Tara, Robin, Trisha, others?
I was just here to listen and learn, not anything specific.
Okay.
All right, so we've got a standing invitation here. Rhiannon and I thought when we were planning for this meeting that it would be good if we could invite folks to help us before the end of the term continue to talk about potential recommendations that could come back to SBCC Academic Senate about potentially refining committee structures. A big part of the conversation I wanted to have that we didn't really get to have, and maybe I should have been more draconian about the time and just deferred to the model that you had initially suggested, was just how is it working now, right? Like, what does the status quo feel like? Because I did hear from, I heard from Ruth and Robbie and Ellen and Anna and Trisha and Ellen again. I feel like there's someone whose name I didn't write down. Who was the senator whose connection kept going out?
Robin.
But I heard from Robbie, and I didn't hear from everybody though. So that's okay considering the time. But
I'll just add because I'm here, so I might as well.
Please, yeah.
But our current structure to me doesn't seem to work very well because we have to constantly form work groups and subcommittees to get anything done. Sub like to the 4th power.
That makes me really happy.
Some committees that are really struggling to find things to do. And then we have other committees that are overtaxed and they have like 15 work groups and task forces and everything else. But like everybody else who's already spoken, it's so difficult to change that structure. And I'm wondering like how much of it is something that we have imposed upon ourselves and how do we get out of it? There has to be a way to make those kinds of changes. But what I constantly hear from folks as well, this is just the way it's done everywhere. Well, this is how we've done it here, and everybody's overworked, and that's just how it goes in academia. but it's really not working for our campus.
Okay, so the first time that Anna spoke, she said a lot, and I tried to address a lot of her points, but I think one of the things that she said that I didn't talk about is pretty similar to what you're saying now, Tara, in terms of different committees having different breadth of tasks, right? So yeah, how do you I mean, on the one hand, some committees might have a very specific function, like you guys have an equivalency committee, yeah?
That's part of CAC.
Oh, I see. So it's a subgroup of curriculum. That makes sense though, I think, because curriculum probably assigns the courses to disciplines, right? So
Right.
yeah, but okay, but think about that subgroup, for example, and maybe it doesn't count in the same way contractually. By the way, I couldn't find your contract. When I went to the FA page, I found a lot of MOUs, but I couldn't find the contract itself, which I kind of wanted to look at because I was curious about how committee assignment relates to a full-time faculty member's contract, right? So an issue if you're saying like, well, I'm in this committee and we have to like meet like 20 times a month, and then like Jeffrey's on this committee that only meets like twice a semester, and like that doesn't feel like contractually fair. That seems like that starts to get into workload issues where we really want the union, or the bargaining agent would have to be part of those conversations, right? And keep in mind, like there are 3 broad classes of committees, although your governance guide splits them into more subgroups than that too. But you have your Senate committees, which are really yours, right? And which your Senate tells your bylaws tell you how you can change or get rid of, right? But then SBCC also has committees that aren't yours, where you have faculty appointments that the Senate makes, but these are either classified as in your bylaws, at least, as an educational programs committee or a college-wide committee, and the resource guide at SBCC would assign these differently as well. So you can't, the Senate can't get rid of those committees, right, or change those committees, while the faculty on those committees can speak up when those committees start talking about 10+1 stuff and say that needs to come to Senate, or this is Senate purview. I have the Title V right here because I keep it in my wallet or whatever. You don't have the same kind of, you as the Senate doesn't have the same kind of control over how those committees are structured, right? Or what sorts of tasks they have. So I know that doesn't solve your problem, but some considerations around that. I think different sorts of committees have different sorts of tasks. Something that I thought, I don't know, and this might make it harder for you given the difficulty with which you guys need to revise your constitution and bylaws. There's specific language in the SBCC Academic Senate documents. I think the Constitution. Oh, here's maintenance. Hey. Chickened out, I guess. Has specific language. Yeah, so what is this? So this is the Constitution, right? Article 7. C2. So this is a little bit of the accountability piece, and maybe these are the liaison reports that we see. But no, this is a little more. In addition, a written report summarizing the activities of the committee shall be submitted to the Academic Senate annually at the conclusion of the spring semester. So that's something. And when we started all this, Rayanne said, well, there is this, this one thing, but it might not be enough, right? And then this is the part that makes this harder for you guys to make changes in committees, right? Committee structure, membership, chair selection, and voting rights on individual Senate committees shall be as defined in the Senate bylaws, says the Constitution. And then it's like really, really hard to update or modify the Constitution with the process that you guys have in place now, correct? So the Constitution says, you know, the way that the bylaws define committee structure and membership are what we have to follow. We can only say that for Senate committees because the others aren't ours. But then we also say that to change this takes this plenary session. You have to have this many faculty vote, which makes it a little bit harder for you, right? Or, and this is that process, yes? Yes, this is your process for amending the Constitution?
Yep.
Where does it say you have to have your plenary here? Oh, that's the 20% of tenure track faculty. No, that's the...
So the plenary is to provide information, not to actually do the vote. But so I can't, it's been a while since I've looked at this, but
let's look at it now since we're here, and this is the critical thing that people are upset about, right? Like,
but it's E that's the problem. Ratification of proposed amendments shall require affirmation by a majority with a typo of the tenure track faculty and shall be voted upon by secret ballot. So within 30 days. So that's where we can never meet that bar
can't get over half
of getting more than half of the people to vote.
Do you guys use Outlook?
No.
Nope.
Your mail? Your email, you don't use Outlook?
We have Google Enterprise stuff. Yeah. So, and I mean,
you have a month, right?
It wasn't for lack of trying. Like all of the divisions communicated with their divisions. Like we were.
Some people think that faculty maybe were just abstaining by not.
Yes.
Okay.
And that was something we talked about too, because I think that's another thing. And Ray has made that point, I think, really effectively throughout our Senate votes during her presidency. Is like there's been this sort of practice on campus of voting no by abstention rather than taking a stand and voting no on things. And so that was something that certainly in my division, Jen, the other educational support division senator, and I were like, just vote. If you're not sure about something, vote, and you don't understand it, ask us. Vote no if you don't want it, but like just vote so we can reach that 50% threshold. And like you can't force people to vote. That might have been something that if we were on campus and could do more of a face-to-face get out the vote campaign, maybe that would have helped. But in the past, it's been an issue too when they've tried to.
Yeah, maybe, but I mean, Jeffrey, just scroll down slightly. So look at the bottom of our Constitution. Yeah. Okay, so like the majority of Senate approved this thing in 1992. Okay, I was 9 years old in 1992. And then
in high school.
I was 9. Okay, so in 1992, this Constitution was made. Okay, and it's hilarious that like we still have typos in 2021, but whatever.
Well, sometimes that happens when you transfer like to PDF. Like I've seen artifacts like this pop up.
There's more than that. But that's not even it. But anyways, just putting that aside for a second. Look at how many successful changes have been made. So one when I was an undergraduate in 2003, and then 14, 15.
I got my MFA in 03.
Well, so there you go. And so you started this meeting by saying, like, look at all of the changes just in the last couple of years. I mean, we are operating with a document that came into existence when I was 9 years old.
but AB 1725 had already been signed and was in effect. And, you know, we can criticize it and say that there's room for improvement, but it does the really important thing here. I mean, this is the critical thing, right? I mean, I hear you, okay? You're heard, but I'm saying that obviously there's some use to it too. So do folks want to join me and Rhiannon on check-ins to continue talking about this before the end of the term? We can be flexible about it. Lately we've been meeting on different days, I guess, right? Sometimes we're meeting on Monday afternoon, sometimes we're meeting on Wednesday morning, but we can be flexible. I have told the I have told the ASCCC that by the end of this semester, I want to assist you guys in preparing recommendations that your academic senate can consider for refining your constitution and bylaws. And so, I don't know, tell me how you want to do that. I'd hoped this would be an action item so that you guys could vote to make a task force or use whatever process you normally would to do that if it was the desire of the group. But I want to help, and I don't know. Let me know how I can do that. Or my check-ins with Rhiannon are good. I've dug some stuff up and thrown it at her, but it was good to get the input of those who spoke today. But it sounds like at least for a large group of you, there's a desire to try to refine processes around committees in particular. So let me know what I can do. And then, yeah, I skipped I don't know, half or a third of the slides, but I guess I summarized them kind of quickly. So, and Rand's got them.
I would say that I would love to join in on the conversation, but I unfortunately I can't add another meeting to my schedule as badly as I would want to, but I definitely enjoyed your talk and discussion today. So I appreciate you coming to help us out.
Which area are you, Jess?
Sciences. I share the responsibility with Robbie as well.
So if the issue really is getting 50% of people to vote, we can lean on senators to help carry the message back. Yeah. And hopefully there was something good in here for you, something helpful. I know a lot of this stuff was basic, but I wanted to center it on, does the Senate make policy recommendations on 10+1 stuff? Because that's the goal. Any other questions or things I can help with? Hey, well, I really enjoyed getting to talk with you, and nice to see Rand do such a good job running her meeting. Nice to know that my dear friends Kathy and Lori are here, or were at least earlier. And good work, SBCC. I'll be in touch. I guess you'll hear from me at least one more time for the conclusion of the term. And my email is just my first initial and last name at taftcollege.edu. It's just this. So I'd be happy to hear from anyone on topics about SBCC's committee structure. And if nothing else, I guess those could inform Rhiannon and my conversations. And how do we want to handle it, Ray?
Yeah, I was wondering, like, we have another Senate meeting next week, and so I'll put the call out there, and I'll also
Okay.
email senators and maybe CCU as well, to see who wants to join us in those meetings.
That would be perfect. Yeah, if you have an action item, and I can be pretty flexible. I only have one in-person class. It's sad. And my online students are doing so well this semester. And my face-to-face is really struggling. They had to start out the semester online, and now they're trying to transition back. But I've got a lot of availability, so we can I can work around you guys. Okay.
Awesome. Thank you so much, and thank you for staying on a little bit later to continue the conversation.
Yeah, it's really a treat to get to meet more of you in person, and we're having beautiful weather out here in Kern County, so I hope you guys are too where you're at. All right, well, I'll follow up with Rayanne then, and I'll expect to hear from you guys soon. Okay. Thank you all for your work. You're doing a very hard, very important job that lots of people don't even know that you're doing, but is critically important to your institution. So thank you guys for accepting faculty leadership positions. All right, I'll talk to you soon. Bye now.